Welcome to the Stay Home, Stay Healthy interview special with Joshua Grainer. Today we're going to be talking about boosting financial immunity. And Joshua is a great asset to our community for this reason. He is a U.S. Army veteran. He is a trained medical professional, and he is also an entrepreneur as well as being an athlete. Joshua has amazing tips and tricks that are going to help you to reclaim your financial stability during this crisis and come out stronger for it. So I would just love to, just give the mic over to you, Joshua, because you're so well prepared for this talk, and I'm really excited to hear from you. I know a lot of people are super concerned about just not having enough money. They haven't frozen the mortgages yet. The bills are still needing to get paid, but a lot of people are without income. And, there's this huge uncertainty of what's going to happen for our entire economy after this crisis is over. And so I'm wondering, what can you say? How can you speak to that specifically? What can you share with us on that topic?
Yeah, so my background is really in medicine for the past 25 years. And the reason why I think that this is important is because, over the past few years, I've learned how to gain a certain amount of financial independence and, how to have a nice, balanced financial life, which has really helped to reduce my own personal stress. And right now, stress is a huge thing in reducing people's immune system. So, the focus is on really helping to stay as resilient as possible. And if financial stress is one of the biggest stressors and that's really hitting our economy really hard, it makes sense from a health and wellness point of view to be as financially immune as possible. So actually I prepared some notes and I prepared a couple exercises for you guys to go through that Lauren will share with you after this. But basically everything that I'm talking about now is all completely written down in notes with links to different websites and different resources. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good, Lauren?
Also, there's going to be time for questions at the end. So save your questions until the end. And if you have any, burning questions to clarify as Joshua is speaking, just go ahead and type it in the chat. And then, we're recording the meeting, so you'll be able to review this. If you have to leave early or something, you can watch the rest of it later. Again, save your questions for the end or type them into the chat. And and you don't have to take your own notes if you don't want to, because Joshua already has notes typed out for you that I will send out to everyone after this is done.
Mm-hmm. And they're color coordinated too, so. All right, so the intention with this is really not just to help us get through this really difficult financial time immediately, but also to create different systems and to create different habits so that way we can actually turn this into a growth opportunity. So I'm going to start with a couple quotes. One is, how we respond to challenge determines if the result is trauma or growth. So the way that we respond to what's happening now determines whether or not we grow from it, or if it leaves lasting impressions on our psyche and our emotions that limit our ability to be as free as we want to be. Another quote comes from Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was a physician and psychiatrist interned in Auschwitz during the Second World War. And he says that everything can be taken from a person except for one thing: the last of the human freedoms, to be able to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances and to choose one's own way. So, when I think about what freedom is, freedom has everything to do with our ability to choose. And that's the ability to create our own personal responsibility. And, there's three different principles that I've really led my life by. And when I think about business, when I think about relationship, and when I think about my own personal growth, these three principles have really been key for me. And it's the principles of attitude, alignment, and action. So if we start with the right attitude and have the right mindset, which in the Buddhist tradition would be the right mind and the right intention, then that sets a solid foundation. And then if we align ourselves with a specific principle or with a strategy, which in the Buddhist tradition would be right understanding, then we have an even better foundation. And that gives us the guidance, and it gives us the ability to take the appropriate actions that we need. And then of course, the next section then is action. So I've got this talk kind of separated into attitude, alignment, and action. So we're going to start with attitude first. So I've got kind of 4 ideas around having a good attitude related to developing financial immunity. And the first one is being strategic. And this comes from my time being in the military, being a combat medic, and learning how to do triage and things like that. And triage is really just a system of being able to organize what we're paying attention to, right? So from a medical point of view, we've got a bunch of people that are in an injured situation. We figure out who we're going to prioritize first in order to have the best effect and the best outcomes. So being strategic, we have to have a plan, and we need to build a plan. And when the process of building a plan helps to put us in the right mindset. So even if we enter into a difficult situation like this difficult economy, if we don't have a plan, if we sit down and say, I'm going to create a plan, I'm going to create a strategy, it reduces the anxiousness and nervousness within the nervous system, and it gives us the ability to focus and concentrate. It takes us out of fight or flight and puts us into the higher functionings of the brain, just by saying, I want to create a strategy. So being strategic is one of the first parts of a good attitude towards this. The next one is to be really well informed. And I would say the best way to be well informed during this period is to avoid misinformation. I would say that especially, in general, but especially now, misinformation is more dangerous than no information, because misinformation can have a direct effect on our psyche, on our ability to be present, and our ability to make good emotional or good decisions, good financial and emotional decisions. The next one is to disarm our internal alarm. So when we're encountering something difficult, we go into a state of fight or flight, which is not necessarily bad. It's actually good. It helps to prepare us for action. But one of the things it does is it shuts down the higher functionings of the brain. If we stay in that alarm state for too long, then 1, our stress increases, and 2, it's a lot more difficult to make good strategic choices. And then what happens is a lot of times if we're in that mindset, then everything that we see will help to reinforce that mindset. So then it pushes us further and further and further into a state of anxiety, into a state of anxiousness, into a state of unknowing. And it further encourages our nervous system to feel unsafe. So creating a sense of safety is extremely important. There's a couple different things that we can do to increase the safety. And the first one is, and this is what I think is the most important, is if we're feeling anxiousness, if we're feeling anxiety, if we're feeling a sense of unsureness about what's happening with our finances and what's happening on the global and local economic scale, we can just ask ourselves, in this moment, am I safe? Do I have my base needs met in this moment? I don't know about tomorrow. I don't know about the next couple hours, but I do know that I have enough food, I have enough water, I've got the emotional connections that I need. I'm able to maintain a certain degree of safety and a feeling of safety right now in this present moment. So, this is one of the things that I really learned a lot from spending time in the military is we learn how to be present, because when you're encountering dangerous situations, if you're not present, that's when things go awry. Because in order to adapt to the situation, to whatever that situation is, absolute presence is necessary. So asking ourselves in this moment, am I safe? If I start to feel myself get anxious or start to panic about finances or whatever, am I safe in this moment? Take a breath, exhale. Yeah, I'm safe in this moment. And practicing that periodically throughout the day helps to prioritize safety over the anxiousness. It helps to prioritize this higher functionings of the brain versus being in the lower limbic system, which is the part of the brain responsible for just keeping us alive. Because we don't just want to survive the situation, we want to thrive, right? We want to take this opportunity and convert it into a growth opportunity. And in order to do that, we have to be in higher higher aspects of consciousness. And then the other aspect to disarm the internal alarm is to practice grateful presence. So, periodically throughout the day, one of the things I have is I've got an app, I've got an alarm that asks me periodically through the day, what are you grateful for? And I'll stop for a moment and I'll take an inventory of everything within my life that's in my immediate vicinity, and I'll say, you know what, I'm really grateful for this thing, right? It's really simple, but practicing these two things, present awareness and gratitude, and then also understanding that each moment we're actually safe, if we are in fact safe, those two things will drastically reduce that internal alarm that will prevent us from being able to get into higher degrees of strategy. And then the other aspect that I think is really important is being in a forward-thinking mindset and a growth mindset. So a lot of times when we encounter tragedy or difficulty, the tendency is to be hyper-focused, to become myopic, to be so focused on just what's in front of us, which is contradictory to presence. If we're too focused, then we're not able to be adaptive. If we're able to think, to be present at the moment, but also to think about the future and to think about the things that inspire hope, the things that inspire growth, the things that I'm looking forward to, that will help to get me through the difficulty. So for like an example is, if I'm in a mass casualty situation, if I'm in a battlefield, I've got somebody who's injured, I know that the distance between where I am and the medevac site is about 45 minutes of walking away. And I'm with the patient, and I think, okay, well, this person probably only has 30 minutes to survive. If I only focus on that 30 minutes, then I'll never actually get to the medevac site. But if I focus on that medevac site, if I know that there's hope there, that there's safety there, that there's security there, that there's an opportunity to change the situation in a substantial way, if that's where my focus is, then I can be present in the moment with the person who needs my help, and then I can also project myself to that next spot, and that will give me the motivation and hope that I need to succeed. All right, so that's kind of like the attitude portion. Does anybody have any questions about those portions? Right, so just review, the right attitude, I believe, for this situation to build financial immunity is to have a good strategy, be strategic minded, be well informed by avoiding misinformation, disarm the internal alarm by practicing presence, gratitude, and reminding ourselves that we're safe in the moment if we are in fact safe, and then making sure that we're thinking forward into a growth mindset, so that we were thinking that, one of the other things that comes from Viktor Frankl's work is this idea that if you assign meaning to a difficulty, so challenge times meaning equals growth. If we were to create a formula, challenge multiplied by meaning equals growth. If I assign meaning to what's happening to me in the present moment, I will grow emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually as a result.
Yeah.
All right.
It's so good. It's so good. Do you ever find, like, when you're speaking about this medevac, space where that there's going to be more resources for you there, like, what if you don't know what if you don't know that there's a medevac? What if you're just hoping that there's safety for you, right? Like, I know in the past, I've been in crisis situations. They weren't global crisis, but they were crisis in my own life. And like, I didn't have something known to look forward to. So I just had to believe that there was something. Can you speak to that at all? As far as, like, in this situation, we don't know what's ahead of us. So how can we create that sense of like looking forward to something? How can we create that sense of security in our minds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's very much where the mental technology of faith comes into play. Faith is a very powerful thing, regardless of what we have faith in. But it's a thing that helps to provide that motivation for times when we have difficulty. So I think that one of the most important things is staying connected. So when we're doing things like this, when we're doing these Zoom conferences, when we're investing in our education, when we're staying informed rather than misinformed, those are the things that help to fuel the faith, to give us the motivation and inspiration that we need to get us through the difficulties. So that's kind of what I believe, and those are my thoughts on that.
Nice.
Yeah. So if we're all good with the attitude aspects, now let's get into the strategy. Does that sound good?
Yes.
So we're gonna dive a little bit into the nuts and bolts, into the alignment aspect. So when we're thinking about a good financial strategy, and we're doing this in a way where we're trying to triage, meaning that we're trying to create the greatest good out of a difficult situation. One of the first things to do is to plug the leaks, right? We want to make sure first that we have a good budget, and you can do this with a spreadsheet. You can just write this down on paper. We have to know what our monthly expenditures are. And, depending on what your income is and depending on what your needs are and depending on what the potential risks are, having a really good understanding of what is going out and what all your expenditures are is really going to help you to understand what your potential is for spending and what your potential is for saving. So we want to plug our leaks. It doesn't make sense if we have a bucket, we keep on pouring water into it, but if there's a leak on the bottom, then we'll just continuously put money in, and the money will just continue to flow out. And a couple different ways to do this is to go through. One of the things I did is I canceled unnecessary subscriptions and services that I wasn't using. Right? And at the end of this part, what I'm going to do is I'm actually kind of go step by step and show you guys what I did, just to give you some examples. But yeah, knowing your budget and sticking to your budget is one of the most important parts of plugging the leaks. And the other aspect is knowing that making more money doesn't necessarily mean that we'll save more money. There's the tendency a lot of times is to think, well, if I just make more money, then all of my problems will go away. If I can just make, So I remember when I got my first job, I had this idea of how much money I wanted to make, and I was able to get that salary. And at the end of 3 years, after the end of that contract, I looked back at my finances, and I looked back at my resources, and I looked back at my assets, and I wasn't very much in the net positive after 3 years of making a six-figure salary. And it's because the more money that I made, the more money that I spent. And that was, for me, one of the behaviors that was the hardest to break, because I was like, man, I didn't have to pay attention to money as much. So my budget went out the window, and I was more apt to buy more expensive things and to engage in more expensive behaviors. And now, especially with going with this into this situation, having not been able to work for the last 3 weeks or so, it's really caused me to take an inventory and say, what is really important financially? Where can I batten the hatches? Where can I plug the leaks? So more money is not necessarily more better. And then now, so one of the other things that is really good, so you've had a chance to go through your budget, you've looked at what your monthly expenditures are, you've figured out where you can save, where you can batten down the hatches. Another thing that you can do is then figuring out where you can delay payments and to figure out what type of assistance is available to you. So one of the things you can do is you can call all your personal creditors. So this is like credit cards, mortgage lenders, auto payments, insurance, student loans, and see if you can get an interest-free, non-capitalizing deferment or forbearance. And what that does is basically puts your account on hold and pushes everything forward between 1 and 3 months. So I was able to do that, and I was able to cut my monthly expenditures almost in half just by doing that, which was a huge help. It removed a lot of personal stress, and it got me into a growth mindset and made it so that way I could be more strategic without having to scramble to figure out how I was going to make ends meet April 1st. So that's one part. And The other one is that there's obviously some economic stimulus that's available to us. In the notes, I put down links to the different websites. So right now there's a $1,200 economic stimulus for people that make over or below $125,000 a year. There's additions of $500 per child after that. The caveat is that you won't get the automatic deposit unless you've had a federal refund, federal tax refunds that has been deposited directly into your accounts. So for the past 2 years. So if that hasn't happened over the past 2 years, I included a link where you can go in and you can enter in your bank information and get a direct deposit of $1,200 if you're an individual, plus $500 per child if you have children, if you're making under $125,000 a year. The other one is we have state unemployment benefits. And one of the things that they did is they added an extra $600 per month to the typical benefits. And then they opened the benefits up to people who normally wouldn't qualify. So people within a certain income range, and then also people who are independent contractors, self-employed and things like that. I also included a link directly to all the information. I had to kind of dig a little bit deeply to find some good videos that teach you how to apply for the unemployment insurance specifically during this time, because what they had on the website before was not helpful, and it was actually misleading. So what they did is they uploaded it, they updated it, they put up new videos, but it's kind of like on a backlink. So we've got a link there in the notes as well. One of the things that they just closed, unfortunately, was the small business loan Small Business Association disaster relief program, and it was a advance of up to $10,000 for people who were either self-employed or who have employees, and it was just to cover immediate payroll expenses. But unfortunately, that ran out of money. But if they get the new appropriations that Congress is voting on within the next few days, that program might come back up online. And the other one is also if you're self-employed, or if you have employees, is the Paycheck Protection Program. And that basically gives you whatever your payroll expense is, either for yourself or for your additional employees, it gives you 2.5 times that payroll expense. So say, for example, if my payroll expense for myself is $10,000 a month, then the Paycheck Protection Program will basically give me $30,000. And that is, it's a loan, but if you use that loan specifically for payroll, then it's a loan that's 100% forgiven. The only thing is of course you'll have to pay taxes on it. So those, as far as I know, between the economic stimulus, the state unemployment benefits, the SBA disaster relief advance program, which is underfunded, but it's hopefully going to be refunded, and the Paycheck Protection Program, those are the 4 resources that I know of this far. Now I'm going to open it up to you guys. Are there any other resources that you know about that I haven't listed?
So I do know that Spectrum, or like an internet provider, if you have a child and they are online school, they'll pay for the first couple of months of your online school. And there is some help for getting kids like online for school for computers or laptops. I don't know the links to that. You'd have to like call your cable provider, internet service provider.
Right. Hey Melissa, would you do me a favor? We just write that in the notes on the side.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Fair.
Just a quick little reminder there. Excellent.
Where did I do that?
If you touch your screen, hon, and then it should say mute participants, and then it'll say more. You can tap more, and it'll take you to chat.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so so in plugging the leaks, what we've got is, one, we're making sure that we've got a good budget, realizing that more money in doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have that much more of a buffer. So really learning how to budget is really, really important. And then, knowing what resources are available. contact all of your creditors, even if you think that it's, even if it's like a $25 a month or $10 a month something that you think, really isn't that big of a deal. It could add up. We don't know how long this thing is going to last. And, a lot of times they may be waiving fees. So for example, my insurance company, USAA, I called them up and they said, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to reduce your auto insurance rate by 20% for the next couple months, because obviously you're not going to be driving as much. So I just, I saved 20% off of the next couple of months of my auto insurance just by giving them a call. Right. So it's definitely worth calling all of your creditors.
I did call. I have a small credit union in Minnesota that I use, and they're doing everything by a case basis. And I told them I was out of work for a couple weeks, and this thing first hit, and they put my loans without a payment for the next 3 months, and I just had to pay whatever interest would be on the loans for a month. And so that was like an individual kind of credit union. What else?
Yeah, I know that Umpqua Credit Union, which is one of our local credit unions here, they they delayed all payments for the month of March, and I think it might be even for April. That was Umpqua?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about this rent strike? Like, I know that there was some. Has anybody followed up with that? I know I've gotten some emails about it. It seems like there should be some legislation around that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that,
Yeah.
And that's a bigger conversation for another time, I think.
Yeah.
But it's, we as American people, we bailed out the banks because they did fraudulent activity, and, they could at the very least delay people's mortgage payments and make it so that, that's one of the biggest monthly expenditures.
Right.
So,
Right.
I'm hoping something like that will happen. Will it happen? Probably not, because banks are, for the most part, they're greedy.
And they're heartless.
Yeah.
They should have already frozen the mortgages. They should have frozen the mortgages by the end of March.
Yeah.
Right. They should.
Yeah. So
I think they're testing the waters though too. Like, how many people are going to be complacent? And if everybody's stuck in their homes and not gathering,
Right.
it's easier to be complacent when you're by yourself and alone,
Yeah.
rather than a mob or a crowd or a riot.
The thing is, though, it's like if you have a landlord, right, and they use your rent as a part of their income, that's one thing. But if they use your rent payments to cover the mortgage, and they still have to pay the mortgage even though you strike on your rent, it's not fair to them as a homeowner, right? So basically, they need to freeze the mortgages. The banks need to freeze the mortgages. Right. I don't know why Congress has not forced them to do it, because the presidential administration has already claimed that this is a wartime event. So they have all these rights, and there's a lot of things. They could force companies to manufacture certain things. They could force the banks to freeze the mortgages. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know about too, like how much material is available to make masks. I have friends that run clean rooms and they manufacture masks. They said they're bidding on material, like the highest bidder gets the materials. So it's not necessarily like they can just conjure all this up out of thin air. But when it comes to the mortgages, like the rent strike, I think is not a bad idea. Personally, I think, it's a way to send a message, but just know that that it's the homeowners that are going to get hurt, basically, right, from the mortgages not getting paid.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those are all really good points. I think one of the important things within this kind of financial immunity framework is paying attention to the things that we can do, because that helps us to feel power, right? Because the goal around this is to feel as empowered as we possibly can. And again, I think if we focus on these things that we don't have any control of, then it makes us feel disempowered, and it puts us back into the lower limbic aspects of our brain, right? So, within this idea of financial immunity and, plugging the leaks and moving forward, having a forward mindset, a forward thinking and growth mindset is investing. A lot of times during these situations, people just want to hoard, right? But if we have an opportunity to plug our leaks, if we have an opportunity to create a defensive strategy with our finances, and if we can identify some money that we have in savings that we can potentially invest, then that is something that we can actually use. So, there's a couple different ways to invest, and one is financially and one is personally. So a couple different ways to invest financially is taking your funds, taking your savings. If you have a bunch of money just sitting in a conventional savings account, you're making less than 1% interest per month, which isn't very much. So if you convert to a high yield savings account, you can make 3, sometimes 4 times that amount. So in the notes, I put a link to an example of what a high yield, high interest savings account would be. So that's just something that's almost like a token effort to get you into an investment mentality, even though we're in an economic dip, right? So, when I think about a lot of the people who have really motivated me everybody from Tony Robbins to the Dalai Lama to Thich Nhat Hanh to Barack Obama, they're all saying the same thing, that the thing that really distinguishes one person from the next when it comes to success is being able to be in that forward and growth mindset, right? And sometimes small little token maneuvers, small little things that we do can get us into that forward thinking growth mindset. So instead of thinking, I just need to hoard and save everything, put a little bit of money into the high interest savings account. If you want to invest a little bit more, you can invest in an index fund. And, I'm not going to get into all the different nuances, but I've got some examples of index funds and some different companies that do index funds on the notes that you can explore. Another one, which is really good, is what's called an REIT, or a REIT, which is a real estate investment trust, right? So these are all things that have a very low barrier to entry. They don't require a lot of money to invest. And so like an index fund is something that takes place over the course of 20 to 30 years. You're not really going to get much of a return on your investment until about 30 years from now. But it's a low barrier to entry. With a REIT, which is the real estate investment trust, these are things that, depending on increasing or decreasing your risk, when you invest, you're investing as a pool, as a collective, as a co-op, into commercial real estate. So you're actually owning pieces of real estate. So if you increase your risk, then you can actually increase your reward. If you decrease your risk, you can actually be more focused on the long-term gains. So you can increase. So it's one of these things that has a lot of flexibility, and it doesn't require a lot of money to get in. I put that in the notes as well. So in addition to doing financial investing, one of the also things that you could do is focus on investing in yourself. So this is doing everything from doing webinars, focusing on specific books and podcasts, and then also there's a lot of online classes. So for example, Harvard and MIT have made a lot of classes available free online. So anybody, any Joe can or Jane can get an MIT and Harvard level education for free. So if we have this time, if we've got to be inside, if we can't be out doing our thing, if we can't be out working, we can invest in our education, we can invest in ourselves. Right. So summarizing that really quick, being in alignment, having a good strategy. Part of the strategy is plugging our leaks through having a budget, looking for different programs to put ourselves into a more financially viable space, to find the assistance that we need. And then being a growth mindset, invest in growth. And from a financial point of view, that's looking at high interest savings accounts, index funds, and REITs, which are the real estate investment trusts. And then of course, investing in ourselves personally, right? Endeavoring to increase our skill, our marketable skill set, something that we could use in the future, or even right now, to increase our personal wealth and flexibility for time and financial freedom. Right.
Awesome. Wow, I love that. And I wanted to, I just wanted to ask you too, before we wrap up, because I know that you are going to have some great feedback on this question. You know, I mean, investing is a great idea, but for a lot of people who are not in an essential industry right now, they might be looking at their savings and wondering how long they need to make it last, you know, and they might also be wondering how to generate extra income at this time. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on that? Are there like, you know, recession-proof side hustles that you recommend, or do you recommend people try to like sell some of their assets, or like what do you recommend for people that are needing a little extra income if they want to, you know, make their savings last through this time?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, the most important thing is making sure that you have a good budget, and if within your budget you say, I'm going to, you know, allocate a certain amount of money for investment, that's one thing. Now, side hustles, there's tons of them. You know, everything from, you know, MLM, network and affiliate marketing, to, you know, going through your closet and seeing what you have that's you're no longer using and selling it on eBay. You know, as far as recession-proof side hustles, you know, there's nothing that's tried and true that I know of, but I do know that if we invest in ourselves and we create a certain degree of specific knowledge, and we create a certain amount of clout within our community, we can leverage that clout, we can leverage our knowledge, we can leverage our expertise, and be you know, and be rewarded for it. So actually, in this next section, that's actually kind of what we go through. So this is what is referred to as the path of the entrepreneur. So it's like an independent entrepreneur. You know, there's 1,000 different ways to do this. There's 1,000 different ways to create your own sense of wealth and your own sense of freedom. And this is just a process and a pathway to assess where you're at, to assess different beliefs, and to figure out how you can leverage the resources that you have available to you most, which is your mind, your ability to communicate, and leverage that as a way to create personal wealth and to create some financial freedom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really quickly go through a couple of these different principles for creating time and financial freedom. And of course, these are on the notes. I've got a link to a video and also a link to a podcast that talks about this more. So if you really want to do the deep dive into it, I'd suggest doing that. So the essential steps for creating time and financial freedom is, first, trusting yourself with money and power. You know, we've got a lot of interesting beliefs about what money and power is. And I think a lot of times internally, we have a fear of money. We have a fear of power, thinking that money is evil or power is evil. And I think if we understand, and if we get a really good relationship, we have a good, honest, working relationship with ourselves, and to ask ourselves, you know, do I trust myself with substantial amounts of money? Do I trust myself with a certain amount of power and responsibility? Which is really scary for a lot of folks. If we can answer that yes, and know, what would we do? Like, you know, if somebody was to come up and to give you, you know, $5 million, would you be better or worse from it? And we know from lots and lots of anecdotal experiences that when people go from not having very much money at all to then receiving millions of dollars through either an inheritance or through winning the lottery, that their quality of life doesn't necessarily increase, and a lot of times it decreases, because money and power a lot of times is going to magnify. It's not going to change. It's not going to transform. It's going to magnify. So if you have specific deficiencies, if you have specific character flaws, that, you know, things that create difficulties and challenges for your life, having more money isn't necessarily going to fix that. A lot of times it's going to make it worse. So asking ourselves first, do I trust myself with money and power? And becoming really aware of our relationship with money and power will help to set us up, because that's one of the things that will prevent us from going down the rabbit hole. So another aspect is being willing to reject what we've been told regarding financial security and education and being responsible. A lot of, you know, there's a lot of people who have really, they've meant really well in trying to guide us into specific careers or paths. And, you know, on one hand, that's really helpful and beneficial, but a lot of times it really limits our ability to choose what it is that we really love, and to choose what it is that we really want to do, and to choose how we want to invest our time, effort, and energy, because we feel like I have to do this. You know, we get stuck in the shoulds rather than the woulds. One of the other things you can do is you can track your enthusiasm. So, you know, write a list of all the things that you're most enthusiastic about. And then you can share your journey with other people. By sharing what you're doing, by sharing your experience, by sharing your path and your process, there's a magical thing that happens where we feel that we're being held accountable. And other people are willing to share their experience with us as well. And, you know, since there is a lot of shame around not having money, or you know, around this idea of wealth and financial freedom, by being intertwined with other people and sharing your experience and learning more about their experiences as well, it reduces the shame, and it puts us back into those higher levels of consciousness where we feel more creative. Yeah, so those are some ideas around the alignments and the strategy. You know, just a quick summary is plugging the leaks, investing in growth, and being willing to pivot. Because remember, the goal is not just to make it through this difficulty, but to change our mindset and behaviors now so that it results in lasting and positive outcomes for the future in regards to budgeting, investing, and adapting. So, you know, what I'd encourage you to do is dare to pivot. Dare to think about this opportunity that we're going through now, this difficulty, as an opportunity to change and to shift what we're doing with our lives, so that we can live a higher quality of life rather than coming out of this and living a lower quality of life. Because again, you know, going back to one of the initial quotes, that how we respond to a challenge determines whether or not it's growth or trauma. You know, do we want to get through this situation feeling that we're being overly conservative and that we're just holding on and we're just kind of white knuckling it through this situation? Or do we want to think, here is a potent opportunity for me to change my life. Here's a potent opportunity for me to invest into my wellness. Here's an opportunity for me to invest in my future. Here's an opportunity for me to invest in my education and to learn how to leverage my resources. And just by changing the mindset, that will change how we respond, and that will take this from an opportunity for trauma into an opportunity for growth. All right. So does anybody have any questions about those things? No, we're good?
I'm unmuting everyone right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was curious to know about REITs, because that came up for investments. And so from my understanding of REITs, it's like shopping malls or strip malls or hospitals or hotels, you know, things that are like a big commercial properties. And so that fascinates me because I've always been interested in real estate. So I'm kind of curious, like, to get ahead of the ball on, okay, so, you know, like what, and then commercial, like not commercial farms, but like CSAs, like farming, like, having like creating a REIT with like backyard gardens. You know what I'm saying? Like having a REIT be, you know, having people be, you know, creating a REIT that would be for farms or for like family farms. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's where I feel like a blending of like sustainability and agriculture and food production, you know, like would be beneficial. I don't know. I was just curious if you had any thoughts about that or links. I'm open. The REITs seem very interesting to me because they have a high yield. They have a high yield of return.
Yeah.
That's from what I've read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, so REITs they're really flexible, and you know there's a couple different ways to get into a REIT. Hey Troy, how's it going? So we're talking about REITs, which is a real estate investment trust, So there's a couple different ways to get into a REIT. One is you can get into one individual REIT, meaning that you do the research, you find something that's in alignment, that either is going to, that you believe, or through your research is going to have the highest financial yield, or that is in alignment with what your specific ethics or ideals are. So a REIT doesn't necessarily have to be in a shopping mall. It doesn't have to be in high-rise apartments. There are REITs that are available for, for other things other than just those. And you can do research into individual REITs. So that's one way. The other way is to go with an organization that does a diversified REIT portfolio. Mm-hmm. So basically that's usually the most user-friendly way. And what that does is it gives you the ability to invest and diversify in a variety of different types of REIT projects. And the other one is also to create your own REIT, which is much more difficult, right? There's a lot of legwork. You have to be registered with the SEC, but you can create your own REIT based on something that you believe is really important.
Mm. Ah, I love this. I love that you're talking so much about, investing and launching side hustles, or like, really focusing on what you want to do at this time if you want to be an entrepreneur. I feel like that is that key piece, right? That key choice of, am I going to choose to let this kick my ass, or am I going to choose to tackle this challenge, and it's really a personal choice. And it's like, it's like that faith piece of like, I know that I can do this. I trust myself. I believe in myself, and I trust what's in front of me and what's in front of us as a group. So it's like, okay, if you can budget in such a way, or if you're in one of the essential industries, like some of us are still working, right? And so if you still have income and you can find a way to invest your income into things that you believe in that are really important to your community, that's a really good thing, not just for you. Like, now is a really amazing time, like from an opportunity standpoint, this is going to be a really good time to invest, because things are going to be really affordable. There's going to be really low interest rates. So it's going to be a great time for investment, is what I'm seeing, especially looking at real estate. But like, it's also a really good time for your community. It's a good time for you to invest in your economy where you live, and for projects and segments that you believe in. And if you don't have the money to invest your time. And you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're unemployed, invest in your education, invest in your business, invest in your community's food sovereignty or medicine sovereignty, herbal medicine, whatever it is that really is important to you. We all have something to give right now.
I want to say this. It's like your gift. Like, everyone's being afforded an opportunity right now to slow down and to pay attention to what the gift is. And they might have multiple things. And it's like that truth in your heart, what you were born to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm fired up about it. And it's like, this is an opportune time for people to like really get into their gift, and it will make room for you. Like, your gift is so valuable for all of us. And that's what I'm feeling, Lauren. What you're saying is like, yes, so there's the financial part, but there's also the investing in ourselves. And so investing in the gifts that we were given as humans on this planet to share. And so this is just such a cool opportunity to like meditate and get in touch with what we have to offer the world. And that will provide for us. I have no doubt, whatever we have will provide for us.
Yeah, this is an amazing. This is an amazing opportunity to change our mindset, right? We're giving the opportunity to reset, to literally reset, to change, to pivot, and to question: is business as usual? Is this what we want? Do I want to continue to engage in these systems that have essentially failed us?
I work in a pharmacy, sorry, fuck, I don't want to be here, like, it's not where I want to be.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling it, like the walking away.
Yeah. I feel really strongly that like you're saying, Melissa, everybody does have many gifts to give. Yeah. And honestly, like the most joy in life doesn't come from what we get. We all know the most joy comes from what we have to give. And so we all have so much to give, and it's about figuring out what we can give right now instead of being like, oh, I can't do this. I don't have this. There's not enough of this. Like, what do you have where you're at right now, and what can you give? Because we're all in this together, and you're going to find the most fulfillment giving your gifts, doing what you love, and giving what you're giving to the world.
Dr. What was his name? Miles Monroe. He said, give away your gift for free to start with. Like, give it away for free, and then you'll see the return like come to you. And, you know, it seems like just brilliant. So, you know, like that resonated with me a lot, you know, just giving it away for free, you know. And I know it's kind of a hard thing at this time with the juncture, but it's like trust. And when you're talking about, Josh, when you're talking about trusting yourself, yeah, that makes complete sense. You know, we're trusting our instincts, we're trusting our gut, we're trusting like what is disinformation, what is misinformation, what is true information, like what resonates with us in our being, because we know already, right? You know what's truth and what's not truth.
Right.
It's like black and white. And so so being clear with ourselves. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're having an opportunity also to trust each other more, and to create these stronger community networks, and to use technology for us rather than against us. And you know, I think it's really a beautiful time. You know, and you know, one of the things that I did is you know, I work at La Clinica, and I walked into work, and they just kind of abruptly said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but you know, we have to close the clinic down." And you know, instead of freaking out, the first thing I did is I went for a walk.
Yeah.
I made lunch. I had a nice cup of coffee, and then I was like, okay, what am I going to do from here? Right? I'm going to plug my leaks, and I'm going to pivot, because I don't want to be in the situation ever again where I walk into my own place of business and somebody says, I'm sorry, but you can't work. You can't provide the services that people require because of whatever reason. It's like, okay, that gave me the motivation and inspiration to say, screw it. I'm changing my relationship and with medicine and helping people, and I'm going to help people out regardless of whether or not I have permission to do it, and I'm going to do it in other ways.
Yeah, Josh, what do you do?
So I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine, so I focus on acupuncture, herbs, but I run a pain rehabilitation program. So we do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy and pain therapeutic pain neuroscience education and things like that for people who are have chronic pain and are undergoing opioid tapering and that type of thing, which is how I know Dr. Shames.
Yeah, okay.
Through that whole process.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, and where can people find you, Joshua? Where can they find you? I know you have a website, you have a podcast. Tell us where to find you.
Yeah, you can contact me through my website, joshuagrainer.com, graner.com. I also have a podcast that I do that's, you know, there's some health, there's some science, but there's also a lot of music, and I'm interviewing musicians and artists, and that's called Human Dimensions Radio. And that's more, you know, it's got some wisdom, but a lot of entertainment value. And you can also find me through social media by my name, Joshua Grainer. Or you can see me at the co-op.
Here in Ashland. Anybody else? Olivia, it's good to see you. Do you have any last minute questions before we close meeting, or Vi or Troy? Do you guys have any last minute questions for us?
Yeah, hi Lauren. This is Troy, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Yeah, so I joined a little bit late. I probably have to catch up with Josh or Lauren afterwards on the side, but I think because I had an interest in this meeting, I'm pretty sure we're aligned. It's kind of a really interesting time. It's presented a lot of opportunities. I agree with most of us here that meditation gives us a chance to just find out truly what our passion is inside. You know, so having that sacred time for us to do that continues to be as important as ever. My story is not long. I won't get into that, but Josh's reference to plugging and pivoting is where I'm at now too. I have a business that's non-essential, so it closed. But what I maybe would continue the conversation later with others would be, what are some points, some actual ways that are not traditional investment roads that we're using? Because I kind of see the future as being several streams of income, so I'm not relying on one. So that's kind of my plug and pivot, is that how do I have those streams coming at different rates and values, so that I can also be liberated to go and take a nice van tour for a month, or go to another country, or teach webinars when I'm traveling, things like that. So that's kind of what my big question is, and I'll be glad to continue it with contacts from this seminar, this webinar. Thanks.
Yeah, Troy. So I put together some pretty comprehensive notes.
Cool.
In the notes, I've got links to different resources, podcasts, and videos that talk exactly about that. You know, how do we pivot? How do we create multiple aspects of income, both conventional and unconventional, and how do we navigate that so we have the most amount of freedom personally and financially, so we're not tied down.
Yeah, and we're not tied down. And then I love the fact that it's empowering, because, you know, to just look at a standard hedge fund or whatever, traditional investing, is still very unfamiliar to me. So I like the empowerment that comes with your notes and resources and community. It's awesome. Thanks.
Beautiful. Yeah. So, and then one thing is, in addition to the notes, I put together a kind of like a question and answer tool that you can use, an exercise that you can do, that's based on the principles of financial freedom.
You want me to submit the
Yeah, and this comes from Seth Godin, from a podcast that I listened to him, and then I just basically took his principles and then turned them into exercises. And that was actually the second day that I was unemployed. That's exactly what I did. I just went through that tool step by step and answered all those questions. And for me, it was extremely illuminating, and gave me a lot of motivation and gave me a lot of clarity about what my next steps are. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Yeah, really appreciate you all showing up. Thank you so much, Joshua, for taking the time to put this together, to put together your beautiful color-coded notes, and to share all this information with us. It was really lovely to have you on.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, you guys. Bye. Stay safe out there.
Okay.
You guys all too.
You guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, Heather, goodbye.